You have to learn the difference between someone disrespecting you versus you feeling disrespected. Emotional ears hear from a place of offense. Sometimes it's not what they said, it's what you are triggered by. And unless you know your triggers, you'll see everything as an attack. By Made You Think 101_. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? How long have you got? Because you see, today we're gonna unpack quite a few things. Oh, this is the episode of episodes. We unpacking the lot, honey, because I am done with white fragility. I'm done. Okay, I'm done to the point of I'm no longer going to allow myself to be complicit in the continuation of white fragility. And when I say I'm no longer going to be complicit, even when I say nothing, I am still complicit to white fragility. And I am talking. If you want to be fragile, that's your problem. If you want to be sensitive, that's your problem. And if your ears feel disrespected, maybe it's not the content. And maybe it's just you feeling unsettled with white fragility being discussed. Sometimes you have to shake the tables for you to know that your chair is sturdy. Yeah, honey, I'm coming from the pulpit. We preaching and reaching today, honey. Preaching and reaching. I don't even know where to start. Where we going to start? Okay. So the whole of last week, I have been doing interviews. So as well as my day job, I've been on interview panels. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, I told you guys that I was shortlisting within my organization. I was approached. They really wanted me to, be part of their recruitment drive. And part of it is because of the role that I am in my organization. And also because of the contracts I look after. I look after very high value, high visibility, strategic contracts. And also as well, I'm a safe pair of hands, okay? So from my perspective, I'm not getting paid any more for it. But for me, it wasn't about payment. For me, it was about kind of ushering in the new generation of contract managers. And I do love my job so much that I think that sometimes if you have a panel of people from a contract who are not from a contract management background, they tend to overlook the potential that sits in front of them. And I'm from that, right? I started from way back when, and I definitely know what I've had to go through to get to this point in my career. But also as well, I think it's important to give back, right? So for me, being asked, I found it such an honor. So I went through the shortlisting of CVs and stuff. And the way this organization works is that we don't, at the point in which we are now on the interview panel, we don't get to see the CVs. We have some questions that we have to ask. And there's some other questions from, a contract management perspective as a consultant that I'm going to ask to bring out some of their skills, right? And make sure that there is a fit, that the person's applied for the right role, the person's applied for a role that actually fits their skill set, or there's some transferable skills, or just a very healthy interest in contract management, right? So yes, that's what I did last week. So juggling a BAU, like business as usual, plus interviews, it was crazy. And last week was probably if I had to tally up most stressful kind of weeks, it would be the top 2 of most stressful weeks, because we had the worst network issues at work and it threw us completely out of the network. So for about 3 days, no one could access their emails, nothing. In fact, I could only see my emails on my phone. Now, the type of work that I do, I need 2 screens. I have files that I have to attach. I've got like anyone's job is hard, right? But you can't work from a phone. And what was happening is I wasn't getting all my emails through my phone either. So it was crazy. So for 3 days, I couldn't work properly, and I still had to do interviews. So it's really weird because sometimes the interviews I'd be able to log on Teams, but I couldn't do anything else. And I think it's because those meetings or those interviews were already on Teams. So one of the days last week, So I've been on a panel with a couple of people. There's this one guy that I was on a panel with called Stephen, and Stephen is so lovely. He's an older guy. He's been in the organisation for a while. He's nearing retirement, but he's really good at what he does. He is a project manager. He's not from a commercial contract management world, but he's been in the organisation for a long time. So he is one of the panel members, and I was the second panel member, which was really, it was fine. It was really good experience. And me and Steve get on really, really well. And I think it's just because Steve knows his lane, I know mine, and we're not trying to overstep, or we're not trying to, outshine each other. We're literally coming together, and we have the same kind of ethos in terms of the reason why we agreed to do the interviews. But there's this other guy, and on a separate panel that I'm on, and the panel is a panel of two, and there's a guy called Peter. Now, this is my second time on a panel with Peter. The first time I was on the panel with Peter, half an hour before the interview was due to start, he sent me a message on Teams, and I'm thinking, hang on, the interview's not due to start for another half an hour. And he says, oh, have I got 5 minutes? Before I could respond, Peter's already put meeting in my diary. So I just accepted it. I thought, okay, well, he's going to be on the panel with me, so maybe he's just trying to introduce himself. So I joined the call, and he says, as soon as I joined, he goes, hi, my name is Peter. I just wanted to know who you were, because we're going to be sitting on a panel doing an interview, and I wanted to know who I'm on the panel with. So I thought, okay, maybe it's be a bit forward. So I told him who I was. I said, this is the division I work in. And he was like, oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. And then he says to me, how do you pronounce your name again? So I said to him, it's pronounced how it sounds. It's pronounced how it looks. So it sounds how it looks. And he said, oh, well, it's not very easy for an Englishman. So then I said, so is my job as a black woman, to make your job as an Englishman easy? I'm not understanding. And, he was like, oh. And he just kind of, got embarrassed and kind of went red. And in my head, I thought, okay, you know what? He's just a fucking wally, right? And then he says to me, well, I'm going to send you a background to use when we're on Teams. I said, well, why? Because my background, I've blurred it out so you can't even see it. He goes, I think that we just need to have a uniform approach to these interviews. I said, yeah, I'm not using your background. He said, well, you have to. I said, I definitely don't, and I won't. I said, anyway, I'll see you at the interview. And I pressed leave, and I left the Teams. Went into the interview. Interview went well. The experience went well. But he was very, Peter was very, when somebody with the power goes to their heads, and the candidate asked a question about contract management. Now, Peter is a project manager. He has nothing to do with contract management whatsoever. So he says, oh, contract management is about buying goods, buying it into the business, and they do all the buying. And I said, no, that's not actually what I do. And then I explained what I did, and the candidate was like, oh my God, thank you so much. I never really got that out of the job description. So it's actually really nice to hear from somebody who sits in that function and understands how they would be interacting with junior members of staff, because that's the role I've applied for. So it's nice to know the dynamic within the teams. And I said, yeah, we're a huge function, so you could be sitting anywhere, but this is, and you could see that Peter's nose was out of joint, but I really don't give a shit, because sometimes you just have to accept that you don't know everything, and it's okay to defer to somebody and ask them to kind of explain. Sometimes understanding where your shortcomings are is a strength, and I say it is a strength because you've acknowledged that there's still something to learn. But I definitely find with white middle class men like that, they would rather chew on a stone than ever concede that a black person, a black woman, knows more than them. Anywho, so the next day now, this is where the network issues were just moving mad, okay? And there was comms that went out from IT. And I know this because I got a text message on my phone, which I didn't see until later. But I got a text basically saying that they were having comms issues and stuff. But in that moment, I knew they were having IT issues, right? But what I didn't know is the severity. So then I managed to join the call for the interview. And the way it's set up is me, the other panel member, and somebody from HR to do the ID checks. And when I got on the call, obviously the candidate's not, you can't admit the candidate into the meeting. So the candidate's in a lobby. If they're in the lobby, they're not actually in the meeting. You know how Teams works, right? So as I logged on, and it was myself, Peter, the panel member, and HR, I was like, I am so sorry. I was like, usually I join 10 minutes before. But my IT issues are really, really bad. I was like, it's just really, really stressful because I can't get in contact with anybody. And I was like, I'm so, so sorry. So the woman from HR, she goes, Toya, don't worry about it. You're always on time. So we knew that it must be to do with IT. I said, yeah, it's just been horrible this morning. And the woman was like, yeah, a lot of us are having issues with the IT. So then before I could say anything, Peter was like, excuse me, Toya, even though you're having issues with IT, you could have maybe tried to call it. I said, Peter, back off. I need you to back off. Do you understand? I entertained you yesterday, but not today. And then he said, Toya, you need to center yourself because you're not in the center of the screen. I said, well, then move your screen. I'm not centering myself. I'm just fine the way I am. So then, you know, when you put white people in their place in white spaces, they don't know how to cope. I wasn't disrespectful. I wasn't rude. I was firm. Because we need to adjust our measurement of what we call rude. Because rude would have been to tell them to fucking shut up and don't fucking talk to me, you fucking racist pig. That would have been rude. But I didn't say that. I was professional. So then, within like 2-3 minutes, Peter was like, okay, I can see the candidates in the lobby. Should we admit him into the meeting? So HR was like, yeah. So HR admitted him into the man into the meeting. And after the meeting, I say meeting, but interview. So after the interview now, myself and Peter discussed the interview, went through the scores. That was it. So left the call. I started doing my work because my next interview wasn't for another few hours. So as I'm doing work now, probably about an hour after that interview, I get an email from HR. And the person that contacted me from HR is the person that sat on the shortlisting. They were part of the shortlisting that I was doing the couple of weeks prior. And she basically said in her email that it's come to her attention that I expressed in front of the candidate that I was quite stressed out because of the IT issues, and that I seemed a bit distressed, and they wanted to make sure that I was okay, but it was in front of the candidate, so they were a bit concerned about whether I can progress in terms of doing the interviews. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I was fucking raging. Do you know why I was raging? How are you gonna lie that it was in front of the candidate when you and I both know that candidate wasn't admitted into the interview at that point? Number two, I am so damn professional that there is no way on earth I would ever say anything like that in front of a candidate that I'm about to interview. It's never gonna happen. But you know what that was? That's a classic example of white fragility, where Peter's ego was bruised by the fact that I put him in his place and I was unwilling to allow him to accost me into centering my screen so he can see me properly. I was not willing to babysit his fragility in accepting that a white man needs help in pronouncing a name because he's a white man. That I told him to back off because he was too much. There's nothing wrong with saying back off. That means you're being too aggressive. That's what it means. So he decided to lie. Now in my head, it could be him or it could be the woman that was there from HR. But either way, it was a lie because we know that the candidate wasn't admitted into the meeting. And if they're not admitted into the meeting, they can't hear anything. They're just like sitting in a lobby, basically. So I wrote back to the HR lady. I said, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for reaching out to me and expressing your concern about the stress that I was under. The only accurate thing in your email is that I was stressed out. I was stressed out because of the network issues that we are all encountering. And I expressed that to my colleagues who happen to be a representative from HR and Peter. At no point was anybody else a party to that conversation. In fact, if the candidate was a part of the conversation and I expressed this, what happened next? I said it's unacceptable that in any situation that anybody will lie, and a lie that is detrimental to my reputation as a professional within this organisation. And it is at this point that I believe that my credibility and my professionalism has been brought into disrepute. Can you please call me as a matter of urgency? Full stop. The lady from HR called me in 0.2 seconds. I said, hi. She said, hi. She goes, Toya, how are you? And this woman, I get on with her really well. She knows me. In fact, like we have a lot in common. Like there was things that she was talking about when we were doing the sifting, because the sifting took ages, you know, that you get to know people. She says, Toya, I'm going to say something. The reason I reached out to you is because when I was told this, it didn't match the person I met a few weeks ago. So as far as I'm concerned, something's not right. I said, listen, this is what happened. I told her. She says, there's nothing wrong with saying that in front of your colleagues that you're a bit stressed. She goes, I mean, the lady was like, I've been stressed myself. Like the IT issues are so disruptive. She goes, I've not been able to do any work. I've had to cancel a lot of interviews as well. So to be honest, I was even grateful that you managed to kind of log on to do the interview. I said to her, the fact that this has been communicated to you, it's been communicated to you via email. So someone somewhere has communicated to you some untruths against my name via email. And that is now an audit trail of incorrect information. And I need you to put it right. And I would like confirmation been put right. And I'd like to be CC'd. She said, Toya, I can't CC because I can't reveal the person. I said, well, it's only going to be one of two people because there was only two people a party to that conversation, you see. So she said, okay, that she's terribly sorry, that she can definitely see that something isn't right and that actually it was a lie that was told. I said, well, I need you to confirm that in writing. She says, no problem. Within about 5 minutes, the woman from HR sent me an email apologising that there was a lie told that the candidate was present when I expressed my frustrations at the IT network. And in fact, the candidate did not hear what I said because they were not privy to the conversation, because they were not present when I was having that conversation with two members of staff. And that she categorically does not believe that the candidate was there and that it was an untruth. And that she would like to extend her apologies to me. And she will make sure that she puts it right with anybody who has been told this misinformation. What more do you want? Let me tell you something. Peter is his trousers are so swollen of frustration that a black woman could put him in his place, that he fought to soil my good name, sully my name because of his ego. And that's how white fragility works. It operates so oppressively because white people fundamentally understand that the way society depicts and oppresses black people, especially black women, is to rid us of any emotion. Because if they rid us of any emotion, people will look at us like we don't feel anything. But white people are allowed to cry. They're not judged by their tears. White people are allowed to express themselves. But goddamn, if a black person expresses themselves, they're being aggressive. There was nothing I said, nothing, that warranted him to lie. There was nothing I said that was aggressive, rude, or disrespectful when I was putting Peter in his place. It was just that it was coming from a black woman. Because I guarantee you, when he's saying that my name is too hard for an Englishman, that's because life has always been easy for you. And what you are calling hard is an assimilation of the alphabet to spell my name. What's hard about my name? But this is the thing. There are white people that believe that life should just be easy for them. And this is why they give us nicknames. Because they don't even want to humanize us by giving us our names, the identity that we have been born with. They still want to strip you of an identity so you become palatable for them. I'm not here for it, and I'm not going to do it. I'm so over the fragility of white people that I understand that how my silence has been complicit in their fragility in the past. That's why I'm no longer doing it no more. I'm not doing it, especially when it comes to white men, because white men are their fragility exhibits itself in a different way to white women. Women will reach for their tears because their proximity to tears is, if they sneeze, they will start crying. But white people are violent with it. White men, are violent with it. With their oppressive nature, their fragility, they're violent. Do you know the guts it takes to lie about someone else, knowing that only 3 people, you the person in HR are a party to that exchange? So that means there's 2 people who are 2 white people and a black woman. And you decided just to lie just because you felt like you wanted to get your own back. And you thought I wouldn't hear about it. That's what you thought. And this is what I say about boundaries and the importance of setting boundaries. There has to be a limit to what you are willing to accept as professional and suitable behavior. If you do all pally, all kissy, all hi, these people will take you for a rascal. Sometimes you just have to be professional more times than you are chummy with them. Because unless you're willing to set the tone of your interactions with some of these white people who don't want to see you there, unless you're willing to set the tone, they'll set the tone for you. They will lie. Listen, for a person to barefaced lie, you can barefaced kill. That's how I look at it. The way he was willing to lie, he knows full well that the candidate wasn't in the meeting when I made that comment. He knows that person wasn't admitted. You know how it works. They're in the lobby. And sometimes you see them in the lobby. But this candidate wasn't even in the lobby at the time. But I'm telling you what it was. A black woman in a commercial contract lead position, a project manager who has nothing to do with my area, is part of the panel for whatever reason. And I'm not even going to go into that. And he knew I knew more than him. He hated the fact that when candidates were posing questions, they posed questions to me. Not because I spoke any more or whatever. I was actually, in interviews, I'm more quiet because I'm looking at the way they're speaking and how they're using the words. I'm making notes. He just wanted to be front and center. And this black woman, who the hell does she think she is? I'm going to teach her. How can you tell me my job is just about procurement? My role as commercial contract lead has nothing to do with procurement. But he thinks he knows everything. And then when he saw that the candidate was satisfied with my answer, it put his nose out of joint because he thought, well, what is it that she knows that I don't? Well, it's a lot actually, because as a privileged white man, you don't actually have to work hard. You don't. You just have to be white. You don't have to have done any qualifications. You just have to be white. You don't have to have worked here, there, and everywhere. You just have to be white. As black people, as black women, we know we have to do over and above to get ourselves even through the door. Talk less of be recognized. So by default, we are more qualified than our white counterparts, because being average is not something that has any type of proximity to our blackness. We know that. But then white people, because they underestimate us, when we come with the knowledge and the education and the experience, they look at us like, how did she get that? And well, it's because you've been so oppressive. Your constructs have been created for you to fit in. So in order for us to even exist in your spaces, we have to be better than you. But there are white people that fail to understand that concept. And until they understand that concept, That their privilege is a pass that exempts them for actually having to work hard. Some white people do not work hard because working hard is not required to be successful in white spaces. But in order for black people to see any remnants of success in white spaces, we work twice as hard, triple as hard, qualified more than everybody else. That is our benchmark. So why would he expect anything less from me? Well, I can answer that. Because even in our greatness, white people will still underestimate us. Because they have been raised, created, and existing to believe that they own everything, they are deserving, they are better than, all because of the colour of their skin. Workplaces have been created, structures have been created to benefit white people. So when they see us, or they seemingly think we are benefiting from something, they believe it belongs to them. And that's on period. But I need to tell you about an interview that I had, I think it was on Thursday. Remember, IT system not working. But if I had any pre-existing interviews that were scheduled in, for some reason the links were working. Again, it was with Peter. So when I went into this interview, let's call the interviewee Paul. So introduce myself, you know the normal things, right? And there were various questions that I had to ask. Obviously, remembering we haven't gone through their CV, but we were measuring certain things. So the questions, we had loose structure. So one of my questions was, give me an example where you have used your communication skills. And this white man called Paul says to me, well, when I was an English teacher in the Congo, the children were protesting that the school failed to acknowledge Black History Month. Guys, follow me. Follow me. I know all of you are like, huh? Follow me. Follow me, follow me, follow me. This man with his Seacrest lips opened his mouth to tell me that when he was an English teacher working in the Congo, the kids were protesting because the school failed to acknowledge Black History Month. He said that he then had to make it into a teachable moment. Listen to what I'm saying to you. He said he had to make it into a teachable moment and split the class up into two and ask them to present why Black History Month was so important. This Peter, this racist indoctrinated prick, said, so how did you turn the children into your way of thinking? In my head, I was like, am I hearing this? But remember, I'm taking my notes. And I had to police myself. I had to not react. I had to be emotionless. I had to be very conscious of my facial expression, my body language, my eye contact, all by remote interview. I had to be careful. Because on the basis of my reaction, it could be a snowball effect, because let's really be honest. We've got racist Peter that can't pronounce names because he doesn't think that he should have to because he's a white man. And actually, he gets a pass because names are harder for Englishmen. And we have this other white man in front of me, who I learned through the interview is actually French, which makes sense, doesn't it? We know the history between France and Congo. We know the history really well. And I'm the only black woman on this panel of two. So then, every question that I asked Paul, the interviewee, he would talk about race and diversity. Any question that Peter would ask him, he'd stick to the matter at hand. So his example about teaching in Congo, he was going on and on and on. Then Peter asked him, oh, was this a European international school? He said, no, it wasn't an international school. I came there to teach underprivileged children. So let me get this right. This man wants me to believe that he exercised communication skills in his words in an underprivileged school. So what he's saying, a school that is for black there's black children there, and the school themselves, run by black people, didn't celebrate Black History Month. That's what he wants me to believe. Okay, cool. Let's just accept that. Peter's question is, how did you get them to your way of thinking? What is his way of thinking? I don't understand. Anyway, I just took my notes. In the next question, we asked him how, give us an example where you've used leadership skills to be able to lead a team. And he said that he decided to do a presentation on racial equality. Yeah, you're hearing me. You're hearing me. On racial equality and inclusion. And what he concluded is inclusion isn't just about race. Inclusion and diversity is about men also from different backgrounds, different. He was going on and on and on. And in my head, I was like, Toya, you can't react to this man, because if you react to this man, you will be judged on your reaction, not on the content and the very racist microaggressions that are seeping out of the pores of this man. And what you have to do, Toya, you have to police your emotions. And I literally was mentally talking to myself, and you would have known a damn thing. It was provocation, as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't until towards the end of the interview that Peter said something in French, and the guy responded in French, but Peter was just like pretending he could speak French. He said that's the only word he knows. As soon as the interviewee said that he was French, I was like, okay, will make sense in it. You're a white Frenchman thinking, obviously, that you are better than. Your privilege is what you took to Congo to come and teach kids. And you're trying to make me think that the kids were protesting, that there was no acknowledgement of Black History Month. And you wanted to use it, the white colonizer, yeah? Your ancestors, slave masters, you wanted to teach black kids and use it as a teachable moment. What was you teaching them, brother? What is it that you're teaching them kids about Black History Month? What do you know about Black History Month? Because you've written a couple of papers on diversity and inclusion. Are you fucking serious? But this is the provocation. This is an example of the provocation that we endure in the world of work as black women as we navigate. We're not allowed to express emotion. If I went to HR and explained to HR how I felt throughout that 45-minute interview, that every question I asked, he made it about race. But every question the white man, Peter, asked, he made it about whatever question he was being asked. Do you know what? There was something that my partner said to me, because when I spoke to him about it at the end of the interview, my fiance was shocked. He could not believe, he was absolutely dumbfounded. But he said, you know what, Toya? He was this white man that has come to an interview. He wasn't expecting to see a black woman there. And a black woman is sitting between him and a possible job that he wants. And there's a white man there. So he reached for what was easy for him to do. And his default setting of privilege and racism that basically probably builds who he is as a person came to the surface, especially when he saw you were a black woman. He goes, how often do you think that he's probably seen a black woman in your position interviewing? So he's thinking, right, I'm going to relate to her by talking about race. But in doing that, he exposes the fact that he has fundamental issues with race. And this is this white saviour complex. They go to Africa and suddenly they become African historians. And I can't fucking take it. It drives me fucking mad. Stacey Dooley does that shit, holding young black babies from Africa, from different countries in Africa, pisses me off. Huh? But for me, it represented something. In that moment, there was the teachable moment that I'm going to teach you guys was that as a black woman, I was literally, as we are often working within seas of white people. A lot of us are working in white male-dominated industries. And white people just sometimes don't know how to act. I promise you, they watch Channel 4, BBC One, YouTube, and that is their education in terms of black history. Some of them don't understand and never will understand, because they haven't grew up with black people. Sometimes the first time they encounter black people and actually interact with them is in the workplace, and some white people just don't know how to do it, and that's on period. And I'm not saying that because of that we have to make life, no, we're just existing in our blackness. Why should I appease, why is it that black people have to appease white people so white people can feel comfortable? And it's because we are constantly taught to appease and massage and make comfortable white fragility. And I, for one, refuse to do it. I ain't fucking doing it, because that's not my fucking job. And even if it was, I ain't fucking doing it. Imagine that my career has taken me to so many different heights, and suddenly I'm on an interview panel and this white man is looking at me thinking, who does she think she is? I'm going to relate to her on the one thing that I know is the most sensitive topic. It's race. He wanted me to know that he had done something for the black community by going to Africa. He genuinely thought that I'm that stupid that I wouldn't catch on to what he's doing. He made me deliberately uncomfortable through his microaggressions, and his microaggressions were so violent in nature that it oppressed me from reacting in any type of way, good, bad, or indifferent. I couldn't do anything. And it's often how a lot of us feel when we go into white spaces where we're the only black person working in a team, in an office, in an organization, where our blackness is polarized because we make white people who are not comfortable within themselves uncomfortable. Sometimes our blackness makes white people uncomfortable because they have to reconcile themselves with the fact that some of them are just racist. Some of them are just classist, and they see us and they think, oh, I've never met a black person before. Because for some of them, some people really, like, there's this one guy I used to work with, a manager, and he grew up in Surbiton, and he openly said that the first time he interacted with a black person, and these were his words, interacted, was when he had to work with a black person. Had to work with a... That is, for some of us, our existence, right? I personally refuse to work in any organisation that doesn't have some form of diversity. I won't do it. Because I will not be the teachable moment for white people. That's not going to be it. What I will be is a reality check for their bullshit. Yeah, I'll be a reality check for your bullshit all day. But I'm not going to be your teachable moment. I'm not going to be your token, and I'm not going to be your example. That's not what's going to happen here. There was so much that I learned last week in terms of interviews. And when I say learn, I mean sitting on the other side, interviewing people. And there was no black person that I interviewed. There was no one. They were white or Asian. There was no black people, which I found quite disappointing, because if we're talking about diversity and inclusion, I would have expected to see a lot more black people. I would have. And I was conscious of that because often I was the only black person on the panel, or the only black person in the virtual room, if you like, of interviewing. But I also had a couple of interviews with white women and there was this one in particular, and her white fragility, she weaponized her white fragility to elicit some type of emotion from me that doesn't exist. How are you coming to an interview and you're telling me that you're finding it so emotionally daunting to be in a remote interview, but you've been working remotely for the last year, according to you? Okay, don't get me wrong. Some people find remote interviews, intimidating. It's difficult. I get that. I get nervous too. But this woman, after every question, that's what she would remind us. And then her voice, she was trying to speak slow. You know how Kim Kardashian speaks? Oh my God. That's not how you speak, because when a cat jumped in her lap, her real voice came out. Oh my God. So you talk. Oh my God, is this your voice? Wow. Some white women hide behind the act of white fragility. Yep, I done said it. They hide behind the act. So sometimes, because I think white women are more conscious of their fragility than their fragility allows us to attribute to their consciousness. Do you understand? Because by virtue of the word fragile, it is to elicit the emotion of protection, of feeling defensive of somebody who is lesser than, because they are fragile. White women are not fragile. White women are just white women. I will not allow a white woman to weaponize fragility to be able to navigate the world of work. You're not going to do that with me. If you want to cry, cry, and I'll give you Kleenex. You're not going to cry. This woman looked like she wanted to cry. If you're that distressed, why the fuck are you applying for this job? I don't understand. I don't understand. And even when I was asking her the question, she goes, do you mind if I just take 1 minute to have a sip of my water? Fuck off. Fuck off. You're just doing that so that I can see, oh yeah, I'm just feeling stressed. I said to her, of course you can. Of course you... well, when she said it to me, I was like, of course you can. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Yes, because your ears are working when you're drinking. Yeah. I'm not doing that. Then when her cat jumped and her voice box returned, she was now stroking the cat and she goes, I'm so sorry. You know, when my cat knows I'm nervous, he does come around me to give me a comfort. Well, clearly then he's going to be a distraction for you doing the job. That's what I was thinking. Well, she never made it through because I did a recommendation that she's so fragile that I think the support that they would have to give her, she may have to take an even junior role. And therefore, if there's no junior roles available, then maybe that she needs to take some time out and get acclimatized to our way of working before now joining an organisation where she has to work remote. And that is a fair reflection of that interview because it was painful. I literally kept feeling like every 5 minutes I had to give her a break to compose herself. How can I give you a break to compose yourself? We ain't even started yet. What the fuck? There are just some people, I think, that don't really necessarily understand the importance of interviewing. And this is why I think from the perspective of a black woman, it was really important for me to do the interview masterclasses because I definitely recognize the nuances of remote interviewing. I also understand that when you're interviewing, you know, there is a level of stereotype that's attributed to us. We operate from a position of defense sometimes as black people, and that's because of our experiences, and I get that. So some of our nervousness is laced in that defense of rejection as well and having to protect ourselves. So when I created the interview masterclass, I really shared all my industry secrets and gems because I felt that it was really important that I communicate to you guys how I've navigated interviews, because 9 times out of 10, I'm always getting job offers. I'll go to an interview process, I'm always getting job offers because I know how to come across. I understand the importance of a developed emotional intelligence, but equally, I understand also the nuances of interviews and the questions that you should ask. Don't get it wrong. Sometimes we have brain freezes. Don't be afraid to show parts of your personality. You know, people need to feel to an extent that they can relate to you. I've been in an interview before, my brain went completely blank. And I said to them, do you know what? My brain has gone completely blank. And I know it's because I didn't have coffee this morning with 2 sugars. And the panel started laughing. They said, would you like us to read you that question again? I said, I'd love that. I was in an interview today. I was interviewing a candidate. And the candidate wrote my question down. He wrote my question down. And I thought, do you know what? Good on you. Good on you for utilising the benefits of remote interviewing, that you get to write things down, that you get to say, excuse me, can you repeat that again? But these are all the things that you should be able to do if you were at a face-to-face interview. You've got to remember, as I always say, organisations have invested money, time and effort to put on a recruitment drive. Money is being spent when a panel is put together to interview you. They are looking to fill a role the same way you are looking yourself to find employment. And an interview needs to be mutual. It's a two-way street. Not every job that is offered to you should you take it if there are certain criteria that are not meant for you to be able to exist in that workplace. For example, culture is really important to me. What is your culture like? What is your management style? Management style is probably top 2 things. if your management style is of a micromanager is not going to say, I micromanage. I say to them, how would your team describe your management style? And how would you describe your management style? That's two different opinions that I'm asking. Oh, I let my team get on with it, but I like them to report to me at the end of each day, and we have morning meetings and sometimes afternoon meetings too. You're a fucking micromanager, mate. You're fucking batshit, mate. What's happened between the morning and the afternoon that you can't fucking wait until the evening, mate? Why can't we just have an end of day if you're that desperate? Do you understand what I'm saying? Going through interviews and sitting on the panel, and I've done interviews before where I've sat on panels, but I definitely think that it's really important that we appreciate that when you are going through a panel, that you have a developed emotional intelligence to know when you're going off course. You know, like you have to be able to read people, and it's hard like when you're remote working, but you're able to do it. When an interviewer is glazed over, or if an interviewer tells you they're going to be taking notes, and for a good 10 minutes they've stopped taking notes, that means they're not taking an accurate script of what you're saying. That means what you're saying is shit. That means what you're saying is not on topic. That means what you're saying is not interesting enough for them to write it down. What you're saying is not accurate enough for them to sit down. That means that you need to check whether you're answering the right question in the right way. Do you understand? You have to be able to review yourself as you're interviewing. You have to. And it's a skill. It's a developed skill. And that's why I've got the interview masterclass for you guys. Because for me, I felt like there wasn't a tool that kind of broke down the psychology of interviews and that made us really take accountability of interviews, how we come across, you know, some of our drawbacks in interviews, some of the things that we don't do very well. And you can practice interviews until the cows come home. But the reality is this: you have to be present enough in an interview to be able to deliver an interview by answering the questions well, but ultimately be able to come across as quite personable while still remaining professional and still also interviewing them. Interviews are supposed to be interactive. They're supposed to be interactive, and sometimes you can walk away from an interview and not know how it went, but feel satisfied that you put your best foot forward and you answered the questions properly and you asked the correct questions. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I've created tools for you to be able to develop interview skills, because a lot of us come out of education and we don't have any. Some of us have never had jobs, or some of us have a job and we don't even know how we got it. And a lot of us are in organisations where our confidence is being knocked, where we're going through macroaggressions, where some of us are being shouted at and bullied. And then when we're looking at jobs and we're finally, work up the confidence to find, and apply for roles, when we get to an interview stage, we don't know what to do. We're like, oh my God, am I ready? Well, I'm giving you the tools to get ready. I've created masterclasses and given you access to those masterclasses. You can watch them over and over again to ready you for navigating the world of work. How can I be in an interview with, again, a white guy? All he wanted to tell us in the interview is that he wrote a book, that he's a PhD student. We would be asking him certain questions. The man will go off on a tangent. Bless one of the interview panel people that I was in the interview panel with would try to help the man save the interview. No, the man was determined. Do you know this man was so determined? The book that he actually wrote, he had it on his desk and he showed it to us on the screen. Now, you're having an interview with us. You're doing all of this. One of the panel members doesn't even have 2 GCSEs to rub together because he said it to the guy. So you're basically telling him, do you understand? There's ways of doing things. I mean, I'm academically qualified to do what I do, but it's only when I'm asked a question, or if a question lends itself to that I divulge it. Do you understand? To kind of, but what you're not going to do is, because you've done all of this, and the man was saying that he has a blog, he has all of this, all that's going to happen is that one of those people in the panel, or the interview panel, are just going to go and Google you. They may not like what you said. They want to get to know you. Think, oh, they're not going to fit in. Stereotypes start to kick in, and you've done yourself out of a job. This man would be talking and rambling and talking, author of the year. And then he'll say, I hope I haven't gone off on a tangent. Well, if you're saying that, that means you know that you have a tendency to go off on a tangent. And if you can't remember the question we asked you, you've probably gone off on a tangent, babe. And I'm sitting there looking at him, thinking any moment now, he's going to figure that me and my panel member are not writing. How can this man say that, I'm doing a PhD paper currently, and for me, this job is important because, after I've done this paper, I've got no other job to do. You can't talk like that. Try and find some cross-experience in terms of your PhD and what you can lend yourself to do in this particular role. Are some of us that... it's not even some of us. Some people are just not developed enough in that way to understand that. In interviews, it's not about centering yourself. It's about centering what you can bring to the organisation by the work that you've done already in previous employments, but also by making sure that you are communicating on a level that the interviewers understand. And the only way you're going to do that is to create rapport. And you create rapport not by asking me what I did on the weekend. It's by watching people's reaction, building rapport. How was your day? Oh, in your department, what do you work on? Oh, I've done this before. Or I'd be interested in doing this. How did you go about this? Build rapport. And a lot of people don't know how. They just don't know how. And there's no judgment. But you do get to a point in an interview and you think, likability factor probably equates to about 60% of an interview. Likability. People want to know if they can see you working in their organisation, that they could interact with you. Likability. You just need one person on a panel. Likability. And if it's only one person that's interviewing you, you need to build rapport. It is your duty to build rapport because you need them to remember you. One of my panel members did 18 interviews last week. 18. And I guarantee you, he only remembers the ones that built a rapport with him or that were able to really deliver in an interview or had confidence enough to be able to draw on their examples that were pertinent to the role that they were applying for. But a lot of us are not utilising the benefits that remote interviews brings. You are able to make notes or to write down the question without judgment. You are able to only show from the shoulder up body language. You are able to look in a camera and see the reactions on HD, my eye movements, if I'm not writing anything down. You're able to see those things. You're not having to traipse up on the train, some of us anyway, to go down to an interview. You are in the comfort of your own home, and a lot of you are not utilising that comfort to your own advantage. I'm not going to sit here and underestimate how sometimes, you get nervous, you're stressed, sometimes your internet, your IT equipment, things fail on you. That's just life, right? But I think when you're in the throes of an interview, there are certain things that you need to do, have in place. Sorry about that. Questions that you have to ask. And I just think if a lot of us understood how interviews work, then we would do better and perform better at interviews. And I've been on both sides of the fence, and that's why I think that I've been able to create a masterclass that is a well-rounded masterclass that is able to support you as you go through interviews, especially if you have done the hard work with your CV, or maybe you've purchased the CV masterclass and now you've converted that CV into an invite to interview. And it's that bit, isn't it? It's that interview that lasts between 45 minutes to an hour that you have to be engaging. You've got to deliver, you've got to answer questions, you've got to remember certain things. And sometimes in the throes of the pressure, you do forget things. And I think for me, it's just about approach and kind of reconditioning your mind to how you view interviews. And rather than seeing it as the most intimidating process, I think you need to see it as a mutually beneficial process. And I get it. Some of us have been unemployed for a really long time. You just want a job. But now, rather than one or two people competing for the one role, you have about 10 to 15 people, if not more, for one role, depending on the sector. Sometimes a role would attract maybe 10 to 30 applicants, and it's double that now because of the commercial space we're in terms of the pandemic and things like that. And I'm hoping that you guys understand that when I created these masterclasses, it's to give each and every one of you an advantage as black women. As black women, we don't get many of them, and this is why I've created this platform for black women, to black women, about black women. This space right here, this podcast, this platform is for us, because we don't have many things that are for us. And as part of this platform, I've created these masterclasses and continue to create masterclasses that benefit us and give us an advantage and gives us a unique perspective to be able to achieve success and do so quicker with less pains. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain everything that happened last week, because I figured there's a lot that we could learn and a lot that I could bring to the podcast. But honestly, it was exhausting. It was exhausting last week, because you have the pressures of network issues that are beyond your control. But to be in an interview panel and not be respected because of the colour of my skin, but instead to be provoked with the microaggressions and often macroaggressions that are covert in nature. And I definitely felt like I had a split-second decision to make, and based on that decision would determine kind of how the interview went. And I had to understand that there are people that genuinely just do not like black people, and when they see us in positions of seniority, it triggers them, because that's not where they're used to seeing us as black people, but that's where we are. We are senior, we are winners. We are here to stay, we ain't going nowhere. And more importantly, success is ours for the taking. And I just felt this, I was speaking to one of my friends about kind of my experience of being on the interview panel and kind of what I had to deal with. And it was just the violence, it's the weaponization of racism. And I was tired. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't upset. I was tired. And that's a feeling of just being exhausted, of constantly having to almost consider perception before I react. That could weigh quite heavily. And no matter how senior you are, and I've got that episode, New Level, New Devil, because I think some people seem to think that the more senior you are, the less you have to deal with racism, or the less you have to deal with office politics. But it just takes the same form. You still have to deal with those things. It just takes a different form, So I'm so happy to be in a position where I have a platform where I can share these things unfiltered, just share it and just say it for what it is, because I don't think there is another platform quite like Toya Talks that is very frank and open and honest, and I lift the lid on a lot of things that we have been taught not to talk about. I'm not going to be grateful for having this particular job when I have worked my arse off and made the sacrifices. I'm grateful to be in the position because God has apportioned this position to me. But it isn't because I haven't worked hard. Like, we've worked hard. But I don't feel gratitude to the white man, because the white man hasn't created the opportunity. God gave me the tools. God created the opportunity. And you have to harvest the fruits of your labour. And I'll be damned if I look to a white person or a white man or a white woman and be grateful to be in an organisation when I know I am best in class. I'm the subject matter expert. And that's the vim we need to come with. That's the vim all of you need to come with. It's this thing, isn't it, where we fear that we're being arrogant. But you know something? It's not arrogance. Sometimes you just have to get comfortable with knowing what you deserve and making sure you obtain it. Making sure that you're willing to request it and just take it, because it's yours for the taking. And I definitely feel as though white fragility plays a huge part in the world of work. And the male white fragility is in the form of ego. We saw with that guy on the interview panel that decided just to lie. It's the fragility of his ego. With white women, it's the weaponization of tears that plays into that fragility that they anchor on to exist in life just to get ahead. And as black women, we don't have any of those things. We don't have those advantages. What we have is the strategic playbook that is the Toya Talks platform that guides, aids, teaches and advises black women how to navigate the world of work safely and in turn light up the path of our success. And when I talk about lighting up the path of success, it's by strategically navigating these white oppressive constructs that seek to put us in a corner and seeks to oppress us and keep us positioned in one space. And that's not what's going to happen. That is not what we've chosen. And each and every one of you that chooses to engage with the Toya Talks platform, the podcast, listen to the episodes, access the masterclasses, that's a choice that you have made to light up the path of your success. It's a decision that you've made to be strategic in how you navigate the world of work. It's a decision that you have made that you're willing to learn from my experiences and the experiences of other women, other black women, other black queens, to be able to learn from, put into practice and obtain success. And I couldn't be more proud of a lot of the feedback I get and the stories I get where you queens are putting things I teach on here into practice and benefiting from doing that. And I, sometimes when I come on here and I unpack and unlock some of the things that I've had to go through, it's cathartic because I'm able to share it in a safe space that we've created here. But equally, I've got people around me that says, you navigate work so well. But that's because I had to walk through pain. I had to do it the hard way to learn how to then observe white people and understand how to navigate in their spaces, because I refuse to assimilate in their spaces. I'm never going to, because I'm a black woman. I just need to navigate them, know what their levers are, understand what their drivers are, understand how privilege operates in oppressive structures. Once you take the time to understand white people and study them, once you do your due diligence, once you understand the nuances of the world of work, you will be successful. I'm literally, I never realized it. I'm actually at, I won't say the height of my career because it makes it sound like there's a ceiling, but I've peaked, and I've peaked for a number of reasons that I will address later on in the year. And this role is probably the single most testing role of my entire career. It really is. And I'm learning so much. I definitely feel like it's like a reality show. I definitely feel like everything that's happening is to provide content for this podcast and content for the Toya Talks platform. So if that's what it is, then fair enough. I know a lot of you want to hear what's going on with Gary, but I'm going to save it to next week because you have to allow you have to allow him to continue to evolve as God dissolves that his nasty behaviour. Anyway, I want to move on to something, and there will be a continuation in the next episode of Toya Talks podcast next week, Tuesday. Those of you who follow me on social media, if you're on my Instagram, my personal Instagram is Toya_Washington. I did an Instagram live and I did on my Instagram stories. So there's a dentist and it's called Royal Wolf Dentist. And I'd done all my research. I wanted to get Invisalign. And I've been shortlisting. I've been, online really looking for dentists that do Invisalign. Now, there is a lot of information on social media. And one thing I wanted to run away from is, you'll have like certain companies that will, or you'll have influencers that will recommend certain companies. But when you go there, like hair shops and hair companies, and when you go there, you get completely different treatment, completely trash hair. And you feel like, hang on, when it's the influencer, you treat them better than you treat me, who's a layperson. And this is the reason why 9 times out of 10, or actually 10 times out of 10, I pay for things myself because I feel like I can be autonomous in my opinions. And one thing about me is I'm honest, I'm truthful. I'll tell you what it is. If something isn't nice, isn't right, I'm not happy, I'll tell you the truth. So this dentistry, I reached out to them, having gone to my initial consultation where I paid £50, done my research, completely excited about Invisalign. And I went there for my consultation and It was only when I got to the till to pay that I was told that the imaging, so that they can take pictures of my teeth, my mouth, to build my mould for my Invisalign, would not be done there. They have subcontracted that out to a third party. Now, when they advertised the Invisalign, they never once mentioned that in their advert. However, at the till, I was faced with a choice, right? So I thought, do you know what? I've come this far, I'll pay. So I paid in excess of £4,000 for my Invisalign. So I went to this third-party company that does imaging. Apparently they specialise in imaging, best machines ever. So I went there on Saturday. And as I went there, it's in Harley Street in London. If anyone knows anything about Harley Street, it's a very bougie area. They just have vibes and money. That's all it is, vibes and money. And I don't know, like, put this in, when I come out my Uber, there were some workmen there and they were just staring at me. And in my head, I was like, I'm the only black woman in the village, right? Anyway, I go to this third-party company. And as I enter the reception area, the receptionist is a bit weird. Like I'm at the desk and she's sitting there. There's no one there. As in, she's not serving anybody. There's other people in reception, but she's just there. She's not on the phone, nothing. She's just looking at me until I say something. And I told her I'm here for my Invisalign, gave her my name. She said, okay, can you sit over there? Anyway, within about 5-10 minutes, I was called. I went in for the imaging. The lady that done the imaging was really lovely. I came out of there. She told me to take a seat. And then the receptionist told me that I needed just to wait there until they had an opportunity to look at and review the imaging. And if they're happy with it, then I can go. So within about 3 minutes, the receptionist turns to me. She says, excuse me, Toya. I said, yes. She goes, oh, yeah, they're happy with your imaging. So I walked towards the desk. I'm like, oh, thank you. As I'm about to turn and walk, she come up with the card machine. She goes, that'll be £50. I said, £50 for what? She says, well, £50 for the imaging. I says, no, I've paid £4,000 already for the Invisalign. I suspect that the imaging is part of that £4,000. No one's told me that I had to pay an additional money, but in any case, I've paid for my Invisalign in full. So she says, well, they did the referral and it says that you owe the money. That's how she's talking to me. That is how this woman is talking to me. Now, if this had been Toya in her 20s, I would have just paid, because I don't like shame. Yeah? And then I was a lot more paranoid about perception. And I don't like to be made to feel like, I'm being put on blast for £50 and I can't pay it. Because there were times back in the day where I couldn't pay it. But I would just have paid it without question. But I knew I was right. I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't fork out £4,000 to then pay an additional £50 for imaging on top of the £50 I paid for the consultation at the original dentist. If they've subcontracted this out to you, fair enough, but I think you need to speak to them because I don't need to pay this. I know I don't. So then the bit that I forgot to mention is that she did appear to call them, and she said to me, they're closed. I didn't believe that she'd called them, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because when I went for my initial consultation, it was on a Saturday. So I know they open Saturdays. So if you're telling me they're closed, either you're not calling them or you're making the assumption that they're closed. But there's something inside of me that said, nah, she's not called them. She just wants to further embarrass me. Now, you've got to remember, this isn't an audience of other people that are sitting in the reception area. And I'm looking like either I can't afford to pay her £50 or I'm lying insofar as I'm telling her that I've already paid for my Invisalign and don't have to pay this. She continued to tell me that they're a third party, that I was referred, they're separate from the dentist and I need to pay, was her words. And you see how she was doing her fingers to show me that I need to pay. Her fingers looking like fucking shears. Like, she looked mad. Anyway, I said to her, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to pay it because I know I don't need to. And she said to me, well, I'm going to put it on hold then. I'm going to put it on hold. It was so embarrassing because it was like she took a pleasure out of raising her voice to further embarrass and oppress me in front of an audience which was predominantly white looking at me. And I kind of felt like, I could just pay this to show her that I can afford it. Or I know I can afford it. I don't have to prove anything to her. And actually, I'm just going to walk away. But the level of shame and humiliation I felt, honestly. Anyway, I left. Now, the bit that I need to tell you is when I finished my initial consultation at the dentist, I had written to them and said that I'd like to charter my Invisalign journey. Told them who I was, socials, everything, and they agreed. So when I left this third party and I was walking down Harley Street, I didn't want to get in an Uber because I was really, really, really upset about how I was treated. So I went on Instagram stories and I just, as I've explained it here, is what I explained on my Instagram stories. Now, I also said on my Instagram stories that the dentists themselves are really, really nice. They're very clean, very nice. Actual dentists are really nice. It's unfortunate they've had to subcontract the imaging to a third party, but that's what they did. And what I didn't like is, number one, if I did have to pay £50, then they should have told me. Number two, when you're advertising Invisalign, you should make it clear that you're subcontracting part of it, right? Because at the point that I'm paying, in a way, I have a decision to make. I've come this far. 9 times out of 10, you'll just pay, right? Because you're like, okay, I've gotten this far. Otherwise, you'd have to kind of start the process of a consultation all over again. So when I explained on the live on stories what happened, I tagged the dentist because I've got nothing to hide. And you've got to remember as well, when I'm telling you I'm chartering my experience of Invisalign, it's not about the end product. That's part of it, but it's the journey to the end product. And I think this is what some influencers don't appreciate. You can't tell somebody something is brilliant without telling them the experience of that brilliance that you're experiencing. Do you understand? God's so kind, I'm in a position where I'm able to pay for things and give you guys a real, unfettered, unfiltered, genuine review of something. And if I tell you something is good, it is good. Do you understand? If I'm not sure, I tell you I'm not sure. I will share things I've bought and I tell people don't buy it until I've done a review. I'm just letting you know I've bought it. I'm really excited to use it. Let's see how it goes. And this was no different. When I got home, I was so angry, and I've informed you guys, whenever you're angry, do not send an email. Don't send an email heated in emotion, because all that's going to happen is rather than send to the issue, you'll send to your emotion. And you've got to remember, as black women, we have to be one step ahead, because we know white people do not see us as human enough to have emotions. They dehumanize us. This is why your experience of the NHS often is quite traumatic, because they dehumanize us. They don't give us the anesthetics. Do you understand? That's our existence, to understand that we are rid of humanity by white people in certain professions. I digress. I went on my live, and if you go on my Instagram page, you'll see my grid post. Or if you go to the Instagram live stories, it's still on there. I've put it on there. And I went on live and I explained it again, and people really empathizing, but also it opened up a conversation about, how high-end places treat black people, especially when we are going there to buy or purchase something. And we need to spend where we're appreciated, because I said this on the live and I'll say it again. There are a lot of lessons to learn during this pandemic, and there's a lot of things that we have learned, right? But from a consumer perspective, we have learned the power of our black pound, the power of spending, where organisations and businesses alike rely on footfall. They rely on customers. You have to give good customer service. Good customer service is not licking the arse of your customers, but it's making that customer experience good enough, exciting enough, pleasurable enough, so that they'll be able to refer other people, give a good review, and even come back. That wasn't my experience. I was treated as though I was worthless. I was nothing. I was treated with such a lack of respect at that third-party imaging place that the woman sought to humiliate me by questioning me about my referral, the £50. It was just awful. then you tell me you're going to put it on hold. You know, anyway, I shared this. And then later on that day, I sent an email complaint to the dentistry. And I'm going to read the email I sent. Let me get this up. Because to believe what their response was, you have to really hear it from me. And you know, one thing I will always say is, when someone comes to you and they say they want to do a review about something they have paid for, right? They're not going to just tell you all the great things. They're going to tell you everything. I give a holistic view. So if you're not happy with my holistic view, that is not my problem. If you subcontract part of your business to a third party, you are still responsible for the delivery of customer service. Because when you subcontract to a third party, you have an agreement with them. Customer service should be part of the KPIs and SLAs. You should be able to, after a customer's received something from the third party, whatever you subcontracted, you should be able to do a feedback form to see how that experience was. Now, for me, giving feedback is the end to end. It's not just great teeth. It's my process and the journey I've had to walk to get them great teeth. Good morning. Today, I had an appointment at your third-party imaging company for imaging for Invisalign. It was explained at my initial consultation at your Royal Wolf Dental Practice does not have the imaging machines and instead are using a third party. Please note, I have done a lot of research before deciding to do Invisalign, and nowhere in your promotion of your Invisalign product was it advertised that you are using another provider to provide your imaging. At the point of payment, the lovely receptionist explained, I decided that this would be inconvenient. However, it would give me a chance to get out of the house given that we have been on lockdown. Today, I attended that third-party provider and my experience was nothing short of poor customer service and embarrassing. When I arrived, the energy was off, but I put it down to being Saturday and in London we're on lockdown. After my appointment, I returned to the reception area. I was told that I have to wait 5 minutes for the imaging to be checked before leaving. 5 minutes later, the receptionist reached for her card machine and informed me that I owed £50. I replied by informing her that this was not the case, as I had paid just over £4,000 for my Invisalign, which I believe is included everything, including the imaging. No one had told me that I had to pay for imaging separately. The receptionist was rude and instructed me in front of people waiting at the reception area that they are a third party and I had been referred by my dentist and I should sort it out with them. I made clear that I am not a receptionist but a customer, and my role is not to be chasing or arguing about money. To draw the above to a close, I left shortly after the receptionist informed me that my case was on hold pending payment. I cannot begin to explain the rudeness and embarrassment I experienced. I expect any payment to be disclosed and done before attending an appointment. What is unacceptable is paying over £4,000, including an initial £50 for my initial dentist consultation, and yet there appears to be hidden additional costs because your practice does not have the required imaging machinery. The inconvenience of getting an Uber and then being told by the way, pay us £50 doesn't fly with me, and it is the principle. The principle of customer service is a basic expectation to be treated with respect and not be making extra concessions as a patient. It is one thing advertising Invisalign and not having the machinery required, and requiring that same customer to go to a third party and then expect the customer to pay an additional £50 for the privilege. Nowhere and no one ever told me that an additional cost was required for imaging. Attached is what appears to be an estimate. Again, this is not reflective of what I actually paid off in full, which I have the evidence for. I have also spoken with the bank today. I would like a full refund. I have previously requested to charter my Invisalign journey for my social media. This experience today is part of the journey, and honestly, I no longer wish to have this experience. I have not received any dental work or Invisalign. I would like a full refund. Now, one of the reasons why I sent this email is obviously to complain, but I also wanted to give them grace. I asked for a refund, fair enough. But when something goes wrong, you still have to give them grace, insofar as if they had come back to me, apologetic, and took charge, I wouldn't want that refund. I would continue. But the owner of the dental practice, let me read you his. This is a white man, by the way. Okay. Good morning, Toya. Luke here, owner of Royal Wharf Dental. Thanks for your email. I think there has been a simple miscommunication on the part of the third-party provider, and I think the member of staff was unaware that we pay for our clients' x-rays from the Invisalign Open Day, and I have a personal account with the manager at this third-party subcontractor, so I will take up your points with him on Monday. The reason the x-rays were not taken at the clinic is because my £45,000 scanner that was due to be installed prior to the Invisalign Open Day is stuck on a boat somewhere in Italy due to Brexit. I have reviewed some of your other comments about the government and believe we have some similar choice words about the situation that has left me in. I don't know what that means. However, faced with no other alternative than to cancel 84 patients, I opted to use a third-party provider. The company is called CT Dent. I keep calling them a third-party provider, but why am I not calling them out? They're called CT Dent. Despite your personal customer experience, I can assure you their images are the best in the whole of the UK. Nothing less for my patients ever. We were open on Saturday. I myself, along with the receptionist, were in the clinic, so I am deeply surprised that CT Dent didn't call or email us. This matter could have been resolved in less than 10 seconds, which is a bit of a shame, but we are where we are. I have also taken the time to review your Instagram stories and posts on feed and feel that we have now come to a crossroads. Either you accept that there was a miscommunication on the part of CT Dent, the third-party provider, and allow me to clear the £50, which is our normal current practice for your x-ray, which is a requirement of treatment, and I will ignore the unfair comments that have been labelled against my clinic. But I understand that in the heat of the moment, we say things we don't actually mean. I am guilty of the same, so there will be no hard feelings or ill feeling. Can you see the fragility? Alternatively, and if it is your wish, then I will happily refund the full amount that you have paid and wish you well for the future in finding a dentist who can undertake your treatment. As you have said, your experience with us at our site has been excellent, and it will continue to be excellent should you wish to stay. Our paths haven't crossed because you went to see the excellent consultant, and that was in my initial consultation. And I think I was in the other surgery. And if you do decide to stay, I will pop in and say hi. I am also about to start my Invisalign journey and will also be documenting it. My teeth are fine. I just want them wider and perfect. And I'm lucky to have, he names a particular dentist at the practice to take care of me and my wife. The aligners will probably also help me stop eating, which is a bonus because this lockdown body is not the one for me. Anyway, I digress. Have a lovely Sunday and let me know what you prefer to do. Now, do you know what my issue is with his response? There's no apology. There's no acceptance or acknowledgement. It's just full of excuses. This isn't good customer service. It's one thing to have bad customer service from a third-party provider, and I can even give it a blight because at the end of the day, you know, their dentist is very separate from a third-party provider where you've subcontracted part of the work. I get that. But I've just explained to you how I was treated, and you're focusing on the fact that, number one, you're going to be chartering your own journey. Okay, as a practice manager, I'm happy for you. Or the owner, I'm happy for you. But also as well, when you turn around and say, oh, you went through my feed, well, I'm sure you did because I added you. Like, it wasn't a secret. You knew I was chartering my journey. You gave me the permission to. But this is what I say when you write filled with emotion. This is somebody who you own this dentistry. This is how you set the example to your staff about customer service. So then I responded to him. and then I'm going to conclude. Good afternoon. Thank you for your email below. Let me be clear. Nothing I have said in my email or on my socials have been untrue. In fact, it was fair and honest in an accurate explanation of my experience yesterday. There has been no unfair comments made about your clinic. However, I think in the heat of your moment, you've taken what I've said personally, as there was a slight contradiction in your email. On one hand, you accept that I've clearly stated that my experience at your clinic has been lovely, and I will reaffirm this in this email to say that my experience has been really nice. You have a beautiful clinic and lovely receptionist. However, it is still your responsibility with regards to subcontracting your imaging to CT Dent, and part of that responsibility is that you trust CT Dent to deliver the same customer service that you do within your practice. This was not received today. I do have to inform you, as I forgot to mention, that the receptionist apparently called your practice, but she told me you were closed. However, I know this isn't true because I actually attended your practice on a Saturday when I had my initial consultation. However, it wouldn't surprise me if she didn't make the call at all, but rather sought to continue to embarrass me in reception with other patients, in front of other patients. Do you see the frustration? It isn't about the money. It's the humiliation and the lack of customer service and the uncomfortable position it placed me in. And yes, I shared this as part of my experience. However, I have been fair and honest. I agree, we have indeed come to a crossroads. But have you ever taken the opportunity to actually hear what I've said on my social media? Because there is a difference between hearing and listening. You would have heard me say that I am going to send an email to the practice and I will determine on Monday, depending on how my complaint was handled, whether to proceed with your clinic. Because as far as I'm concerned, when I'm giving an accurate review of my experience, sometimes things fall short. And you have to give people the opportunity to rectify where there has been issues. I run a business which is customer centered. And I understand that you meet people from different walks of life, but equally, that you trust people to deliver a service on your behalf, and it's not always done to your standard. And sometimes when issues are raised to your attention, for me, it is my responsibility to put it right. And in this case, I've emailed you with the intention to either resolve it or indeed obtain a refund. The experience I had yesterday was not only humiliating in an audience with other patients, but it was embarrassing. And as I was sitting there debating the principle of the fact that I have paid for the service already, and being made to feel as though I wasn't being honest or I couldn't afford £50, I don't expect you to understand how uncomfortable and embarrassing it was yesterday. What annoyed me wasn't necessarily the demand for payment, it was the treatment. This, in fact, is the reason I do reviews and share, realizing that customer service doesn't begin and end when you purchase something. It's the entire experience. An apology would have gone a long way. In any case, the contents of your email have been noted. Please issue a refund in full. The man just emailed me asking me for my bank details. Listen, spend your money where you're valued. If you haven't picked up anything from what I've just told you, I'm a customer. Forget that we're in a pandemic for a moment, because the nuance of a pandemic means that businesses, independent businesses, have been struggling. Some closed down. Some people have been on furlough since the beginning of the pandemic. Someone's come into your dentistry and has told you that the third party treating them like shit. And you're coming to tell me that you've basically done a forensic analysis of my social media. Well, I hope that you would have, since I atted you. But it's the attitude and the tone, the arrogance, the fragility. Oh, my machine, the one that I would have had in my practice, is stuck in the boat in Italy that I paid £45,000 for. That's how white men weaponize their fragility. And that's on period, because it's the truth. We have to understand as black people the strength of the pound, the strength of our coin, because when we're navigating the world of work, when we are strategically trying to raise the bar, when we're trying to make moves and we're working, we're making money, remembering the stress that we went through to earn that money, we need to understand the power of that money that we spend and whose pockets we align our monies with. Do you understand? Royal Wolf Dentistry, to me, You are the practice manager, because that's how you introduce yourself, you, the owner. And there's nothing about this email that tells me you're an owner. What it tells me is that you're rude. What it tells me, in my opinion, is that you're rude. In my opinion, you are arrogant. In my opinion, you have white fragility. I personally don't know what it is about white people, in particular white men, and their inability to find some proximity to the word I apologize. I'm sorry that was your experience. I'm sorry that was your experience. Let me make it better. Let me sort it out, and hopefully you won't have to deal with them again. Taking responsibility isn't a weakness. After all, July 2020? Yeah, July 2020. I was supposed to have the Toy Talks live, my second live event. When I realised that the pandemic wouldn't allow me to do that, I sent every single customer an email. Every single customer an explanation as to why I was cancelling. I refunded them immediately and then sent a follow-up email to let them know that when I reschedule, that I would offer the tickets to them first as like priority tickets to be purchased before they have a general release. Because I wanted people to understand that this is outside of my control, but I'm in control of the customer service that I deliver. When you take someone's money, you owe it to them to give them a good experience, to justify why they should come back, refer somebody else, or even why they spend that money with you. But I genuinely think that in white-dominated spaces, they really take the piss. And as far as I'm concerned, I have always been very conscious about where I spend my money, but I'm hyper conscious of it now. And there are black dentists, don't get me wrong. Some of them don't specialise in Invisalign. Some of them I'm looking at their reviews. And some I'm getting a lot of recommendations from people about my Invisalign journey. But understand this now when I tell you this. Spend your money where you're welcome, where you're treated correctly, and don't feel obligated to put yourself in an uncomfortable position for the sake of avoiding shame and stereotype. If you're not happy with the service you've received, please tell me, because I want to know so that I don't go there. That's why I do what I do. I get referrals, I get recommendations by so many people for so many different things. But what I will always bring to you and deliver to you through my socials and the podcast is the truth. Spend where you are appreciated, because you know the hustle that you had to go through to earn the money that you're spending. Remember what I've always said. I won't be humble in my enjoyment because I was humble in my struggle. So knowing that I had to be humble in my struggle, and now I want to enjoy. You're now making my experience bad, and you think I'm not going to tell my brothers and sisters. Hell to the no, I'm going to tell them. Anyway, guys, I'm going to draw this episode to a close. I've really enjoyed delivering this episode. I really hope that you've picked the gems, and I'm hoping that you've learned something, and I'm hoping this episode touches someone, anyone, or maybe just all of you. That would be great. If you want to follow me on social media, then of course you know I'm on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks Instagram page is Toya_Talks. Follow me on Clubhouse, Toya Washington, all one word, or follow our room on Clubhouse. Our club is called Toya Talks. You can follow me on Snapchat, Toya Washington, all one word, or of course you can follow me on Twitter, Toya_W, and the hashtag is Toya Talks. Thank you guys for joining me as you do each and every Sunday. We have some great episodes coming to you over the next few weeks, and I'm so happy to be delivering them to you. If you are new to the episode, new to the podcast, thank you, welcome. Acquaint yourself with some of the previous episodes. If you are listening for the very, very first time, then we have a website, www.toyatalks.com, and we have a plethora of masterclasses. I've always wanted to use that word in this podcast. Of masterclasses. We've got the CV masterclass, we've got the interview skills masterclass, negotiation masterclass, redundancy masterclass, and the mother and daughter masterclass. And soon we will also be adding the passing your probation masterclass, because that one is a long time coming. And of course the maternity masterclass as well, that is in the works, and I'm so excited to be delivering that. Please make sure you reach out to me if you've enjoyed this podcast episode, or you enjoy the podcast, and you guys know bi-weekly I will be hosting a clubhouse based on one of the topics covered on the podcast. I'm thinking of doing one on the episode Briefcase Bandicoot. So go ahead and have a listen or a re-listen to reacquaint yourself, and make sure you look out for the room that will be on Clubhouse. It will probably be on Saturday, but I will announce it on my social media so that you'll get to see it, and the time as well. Also as well, before I draw this episode to a close, I do want to talk about in one of the podcasts that hopefully will be coming up about multitasking, organisation, especially from the perspective of someone who has a learning difficulty. You guys know that I am dyslexic. But a stationery company that I really, really love, and I really want to share it. This is not sponsored or anything. It's just because in terms of kind of managing how I do my work, deliver my work, and just how I write things down and how I learn, there's a stationery company that is Black owned, and it's called Dreams and Purpose. Dreams and Purpose. And I will at them in the summary box, but make sure you look out for them on social media. I will at them as well. And I have atted them before on my Instagram stories, but they have amazing stationery, Black owned, Black created. And I've bought a couple of things from them, like my notebook, my checklist. So make sure you check them out. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to go on. I'm wishing you an amazing Tuesday if you're listening to this episode on release date, which is every Tuesday. But whatever day you're listening to this, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. If you know of anybody, irrespective of their age, experience, industry, that you know that can really benefit from understanding how to navigate the world of work strategically. Even the men, I know a lot of our queens are referring the episodes and podcasts to some of our Black kings. Please just recommend it to anybody, but you know that this is a safe place for Black women to share. This episode is 2 Black women, for Black women, about Black women. This podcast is 2 Black women, for Black women, about Black women. So share it with people, and make sure people understand that there is a strategy to navigating the world of work, and there is a strategy for success in the world of work too. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you rate and review. I read all your reviews. If you have a work-related dilemma, your anonymity will be kept, but email me and I'll advise you across the podcast, across these airwaves. And the email address is hello@toyatalks.com. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.